training. This training will provide an overview of the P-Card program, policies, and procedures. The intent of the P-Card program is to provide a streamlined and simplified purchasing and payment process for the smaller dollar items, generally under $2,000. Some of the goals of the program are to reduce the cost of processing, ensure faster delivery, and simplify the payment process. The P-Card, also known as a purchasing card, is an institutional liability card. Payments are made directly to Bank of America on a monthly basis by the college. Applying for and using a P-Card does not impact the P-Card holder's personal credit history. The P-Card program relies on internal administrative controls and periodic audits to ensure that P-Cards are utilized in accordance with institutional and state policies and procedures. The P-Card may only be used for approved purchases related to college business. Use of the P-Card for personal purchases is strictly prohibited. Misuse of the P-Card may result in revocation of the card, disciplinary action, and possible termination of employment. The key contacts for the program are Jess Waddington and Diana Higgins in purchasing, and the Bank of America customer service number. A P-Card can be requested using the forms on purchasing's website. Completed forms should be submitted to purchasing, and within around 3 to 5 business days, the card will arrive. Purchasing will notify you to come and pick up the card. The link here takes you to the purchasing website where the forms are available. A P-Card can be requested in an individual or department P-Card. An individual card is a card that's in an individual's name and is for that cardholder's use only. The card should not be shared with other employees. A cardholder may, however, purchase items for others in the department, and a cardholder who is the department head may authorize one of their direct report employees to use their card to make purchases on their behalf. A P-Card in an individual's name may have a P-Card manager designated. A P-Card manager is somebody that assists the P-Card holder with coordinating their receipts, supporting documentation, allocating in the work system, and generally assisting the P-Card holder with the P-Card. An individual P-Card does not have to have a P-Card manager assigned, but it may have a P-Card manager assigned. A department P-Card is a card issued in the department name and may be used by authorized individuals in that department who have completed the P-Card application and the P-Card training. Departments must designate a specific P-Card manager to manage their department card. There are several different roles within the P-Card program. Next, we'll review those roles and the associated responsibilities. There's a P-Card holder, which would be an individual that has a card in their name. There could be a P-Card manager for that individual's card, a P-Card manager for a department card, the supervisor of P-Card holders and/or a department head for department cards, and then authorized users of department cards. The main responsibilities for a P-Card holder, P-Card manager, and authorized users of department cards are generally the same. Those main responsibilities are ensuring proper use of the P-Card, being accountable for the P-Card security, for example, maintaining the physical security of the P-Card, making purchases in accordance with institutional and state policies and procedures, obtaining receipts and any supporting documentation for each purchase, ensuring sales tax is excluded. The college is sales tax exempt for purchases of goods that are picked up within the state of Idaho. Notifying a P-Card administrator of changes in personal employment, including transfer or termination by submitting a P-Card maintenance form, and documenting and reporting any violations to the P-Card administrator. Bank of America Works is the online system where P-Card transactions are reconciled and signed off on. The P-Card holder has certain responsibilities within the Works system. They're required to reconcile and sign off prior to the sweep date. The sweep date is a date that's published each month on the Works homepage and is generally the 4th day of the following month. For example, October 2024 transactions must be signed off by November 5th, 2024. Transactions must be reconciled and signed off by this date. After the sweep date, the transactions will no longer be available to edit. To reconcile transactions, the P-Card holder will perform the following. They'll allocate the appropriate fund, function, cost center, and object code. These components make up the GL string or the budget code. Each department has specific budget codes that they know to use for different transactions. Reconciling also includes attaching a receipt or any approval or supporting documentation to each transaction. Entering a business reason on each transaction. The business reason will include a description of what the purchase was and who it was for. For example, office supplies for Bob. And then comments. If there's any comments that might need to be added, there's a comment field for each transaction. Once the transactions are reconciled, the P-card holder is required to sign off on the transactions prior to the sweep date, providing enough time for their supervisor to also review and sign off prior to the sweep date. A note here that some P-card holders will have a P-card manager, and the P-card manager can be responsible for reconciling transactions for the P-card holder. So the P-card manager can access works and perform all of the reconciliation functions. And at that point, the P-card holder would access works, review what the P-card manager entered, and sign off. The individual P-card manager will not sign off on transactions in works. The individual P-card manager is essentially responsible for assisting the P-card holder with all of their responsibilities. However, they will not sign off on the transactions. So the individual P-card manager will assist the P-card holder with their main responsibilities and with reconciling transactions within the work system. A department P-card manager has the same main responsibilities as a P-card holder. Their responsibilities in the work system include reconciling and signing off. As a department card does not have an individual name on it, it has a department name. The P-card manager for that department card is responsible for signing off. They'll perform the same reconciliation functions, and they'll sign off by the sweep date, providing enough time for their department head to also review and sign off prior to the sweep date. Supervisors and department heads. They're responsible for all of the P-cards within their area, for authorizing the P-card expenses, establishing individual and departmental P-card procedures. One example would be providing a specific date that their P-card holders or department P-card manager need to reconcile and sign off on the P-card transactions, allowing them enough time to go in to review and approve. Reviewing activity to verify that individual and department P-card use complies with state of Idaho and institutional policy, procedures, and provisions of the P-card program. Discussing any non-compliance issues with their staff, and if any violations occur, discuss appropriate action with the P-card program administrator. Notifying a P-card administrator of any suspected or actual P-card misuse, and notifying a P-card administrator if a department P-card manager or P-card holder is transferred to another department or is no longer employed by the college. A supervisor or department head also has responsibilities within works. They'll review and sign off on all transactions prior to the sweep date. They'll review the transactions to ensure the correct allocation has been entered, a valid receipt, and any required approval or supporting documents have been attached. Look for the business reason and any comments to ensure accuracy and completeness. Ensure all transactions comply with state of Idaho and institutional policies, procedures, and provisions of the program. If information is missing or inaccurate, they should advise the P-card holder or P-card manager to make the correction. And once the corrections have been made, review and sign off by the sweep date. Authorized users of department cards have the same main responsibilities when it comes to use of the P-card. However, they have no responsibilities within the work system. An authorized user of the department card is responsible for ensuring all of the main responsibilities are followed. However, the department P-card manager is the one that accesses works and reconciles and signs off. The purchasing website has works procedure guides for each of these roles and responsibilities. Access the works procedure site on the purchasing website for guides and training. The P-card program has different limits that are in place that are established on the back end. The Visa system, which is what the Bank of America P-card is, has preset restrictions for single purchase limits, monthly credit limits, and merchant commodity codes, or MCCs. The single purchase limit is set at $1,999.99. Credit limits or monthly spending limits are generally set at $5,000 or more, depending on what's requested on the P card application. Merchant commodity codes are approved codes for vendors, and these are set on the program level on the back end. For example, a jewelry store or a pawn shop would be a blocked merchant commodity code. If you ever try to use your P card with a vendor that you believe should be a valid purchase and the P card will not process, contact the P card administrators. We can review the MCC code for that merchant. An MCC lift can be requested if the vendor that you need to purchase from is an authorized purchase for the college. A request to temporarily lift that MCC restriction can be sent to the P card holder supervisor or the department head or a member of senior leadership, and the approval email can then be submitted to purchasing. Purchasing will be able to lift that MCC restriction so the purchase can be made. Retain the approval documentation and attach to the P card transaction in Works for any request to lift the MCC code. There are other account settings that can be requested to temporarily lift or update. The monthly P card expense limit, so that monthly credit limit, you can request to temporarily increase your monthly expense limit, sending an email to your P card holder supervisor, the department head for a department card, or a member of senior leadership. The approval can be submitted via email or other electronic means to purchasing. Once purchasing receives that approval, we can temporarily increase the credit limit for your card for the specific amount of time, generally a month or so. Retain the approval documentation and attach to your P card transaction in Works. Any request to permanently increase the monthly expense limit will require the P card maintenance form to be completed and submitted. A single transaction limit lift could also be requested. Authorized purchases can be approved by the P card holder supervisor or the department head for department cards or a member of senior leadership. The approval email should be submitted to purchasing, and we can temporarily lift the single transaction limit. Single transaction limits for fixed asset items are generally not provided exceptions for, except in certain instances. A vendor may provide a discount for purchasing with the P card, or they may only accept P cards. A fixed asset level item is an item that is a single item that is worth $2,000 or more, and we generally don't make these purchases on a P card. We make them with a purchase order. However, if an exception is approved by purchasing for one of those common reasons, the vendor only accepting P cards or providing a discount, purchasing will be able to lift that single transaction limit and the purchase can be made. The department will be responsible for sending certain information to the financial manager and accounts payable in the controller's office. Once the equipment or item has been received, the department should send the invoice or receipt, product description, department responsible for the item, the building and room number where the item will be stored, cost center that was used for the purchase, and serial number if applicable. The controller's office staff requires this information to add that fixed asset level item to our inventory tracking system, and they'll send you an inventory tracking tab to affix to the item. State contracts. The state of Idaho has issued contracts for state agencies to use when purchasing certain goods or services. The purchasing website has a list of state contracts and a link to the Division of Purchasing for the complete list. If you have any questions on if a purchase has a state contract or if certain items are available on state contract, please reach out to purchasing and we can help review with you. If you do have a valid reason to purchase outside of a state contract, for example, if an item is not available or if there is a lower price or the same price available on a non-state contract vendor, ensure that you document the reason in the comments in Works and, if applicable, attach price comparisons. Splitting a purchase. We need to be diligent to avoid trying to split a purchase to bypass the $1,999.99 single transaction limit. A single purchase cannot be divided into separate transactions or to different vendors to circumvent the single purchase dollar limit. If you do have a purchase that is over $2,000, that's an authorized purchase, you can request the single transaction limit from your P card holder supervisor or department head for a department card, and then submit to purchasing so that the single transaction limit can be lifted. The following are examples of common uses of the P card program, different authorized transactions: airline tickets, automotive parts, baggage, books, magazines, building materials, information technology with IT approval, conference registration fees, equipment repairs, food and meals, which we'll discuss in the food and meals section, gas for rental cars, lodging, newspaper ads, parking, printing, rental cars, short-term rentals, and campus food and bookstore purchases. This is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some of the main items that are purchased. Next, we'll walk through some examples of unauthorized P card transactions: alcoholic beverages, any single transaction exceeding $1,999.99 unless a single transaction limit increase is approved, cash advances, donations, entertainment, food or meals while traveling unless a P card food use while traveling exemption form has been approved, gas for personal vehicles, gift certificates and gift cards, any payment to an independent contractor or professional services, items for personal use, medical professionals, purchases that involve signing an agreement, license, contract, or lease, or salaries and wages. The P card food exemption form. The P card food exemption procedure has been updated to streamline purchasing processes for campus and community food vendors and to reduce manual work. P cards are now the preferred method for food purchases or meal purchases, and a P card food exemption form is not required except for requesting to purchase food or meals with the P card while traveling. All food purchases must follow the applicable policies and procedures. The completion and approval of a meal and entertainment request form prior to purchase may be required. Approved MER, meal and entertainment request forms, must be retained with the P card transaction in Bank of America Works. The relevant P card food policies and procedures are listed here. The P card policy and procedures, the employee meal and refreshment policy, entertainment public relations and related expenses, the MER form, and a food purchase guideline landing page. These policies and forms should be reviewed prior to any food or meal purchase to ensure that there's not a requirement that must be met first prior to the purchase. Approval documentation. Previously, we discussed how the receipt and any required approval documentation would need to be attached to the transaction in Works. There are several different types of approval documents that are outside of the purchasing approval that may apply to your purchase. For example, travel and any related expenses. We have the travel policy and the travel authorization form on the Controller's Office travel site. Travel requires an authorization prior to purchase, and that travel authorization would be an authorization document that would need to be updated with the P card transaction. There are grant purchases, and the grants and contracts site has a grant P card form that's required to be processed and approved prior to purchase of any items with grant funds on the P card. Information technology related purchases, which would include any computer equipment, multimedia hardware, communications related equipment, peripherals, which are keyboards, mice, screen protectors, flash drives, that type of equipment that's over $100. Software or online services will all require the Information Technology Director's approval prior to purchase. This approval document would likely be an email, and that should be retained and attached to the P card transaction in Works. Employee meal, entertainment, and refreshment. Pre-approval may be required for employee meals, refreshments, entertainment, public relations, or related expenses. The policies 4.116 and 4.117 are available here, and the meal and entertainment request form may be required to be completed prior to purchase, and that document would be uploaded to the P-card transaction in Works. Prior to making a purchase, it's important to ensure that a few steps are completed first. You'll want to make sure that you have funds available. You can access Bank of America Works to view your current transactions posted and available balance. If you're getting close to or at your credit limit and you try to make a purchase, the purchase will likely not go through due to insufficient funds. Check to ensure that the purchase you're about to make is on the authorized list and not on the unauthorized list, and that it is not one of the MCC restricted vendors. Ensure the transaction is consistent with the applicable rules for the P-card use. A note that the P-card can be used for any vendor that accepts Visa. You'll want to ensure that when you're working with the vendor, that you let them know that a receipt is required, and your receipt should be obtained and kept for future reference. Be sure to notify the vendor that the purchase is exempt from Idaho sales tax, except if the goods are received out of state. For example, if you go to Costco and pick up the goods in Washington, we will not be exempt from sales tax. Make sure your vendor knows delivery and shipping instructions. Ensure that you confirm the grand total to be charged to your card with the vendor. Make sure you obtain valid receipts and any other supporting documentation. If the vendor cannot provide a receipt or documentation, we do have a missing receipt affidavit form that can be completed. Make sure that you are not overusing the missing receipt affidavit form. Repeated use of the form may result in cancellation of the P-card. Most vendors are able to provide a receipt. Ensure that you ask for and obtain your receipt at the time of purchase. A few tips on online orders. When ordering online, ensure that you're using good judgment. Don't use the P-card where you wouldn't use your own personal card. Look for vendors that have secure websites. Look for the S in the HTTPS portion of the URL to ensure the website is encrypted. Ensure that you are not emailing your P-card number. Sending your P-card number via email will not be an acceptable way to make a purchase or for payment. If you do need to communicate the P-card number through campus email, refer to the last 4 digits of the P-card. We talk about a valid receipt and that it needs to be obtained from the vendor and retained with your Bank of America transaction. The following are some key areas to look for ensuring you have a valid receipt. The receipt should contain the vendor name and address, date of purchase, description, unit price, quantity of each item, total cost of the order, shipping and handling charges, should include the P-card holder's name and or last 4 digits of the P-card number. Document retention. All receipts and associated approval or supporting documents must be retained for a period of 5 fiscal years, including the current year. Transactions involving federal or grant funds may require a longer retention period. Always check with the grant administrator if you're unsure of that retention period. Records, electronic or hard copy, should be retained in the department and must be available for review or audit upon request. Electronic records are sufficient. If you have a hard copy that you scan and save and keep in the college files, that's sufficient. You don't have to also retain the hard copy. Disputed charges. If you ever view a charge in Bank of America Works and are unsure about it, please contact the vendor first to try to resolve the issue or the error. If the vendor feels that the original charge was correct and won't make any adjustment to it, contact your P-card manager or initiate the dispute yourself in Works. Bank of America will likely request complete details of the dispute in writing in order to research that disputed charge. Sales and use tax. We discussed how you should ask a vendor or tell a vendor that we are tax exempt and ensure that they do not charge tax. We do have a ST-101 form, which is our tax exempt form on the purchasing website. A vendor may require you to send that to them. You can download that from the purchasing website and send it to your vendor. Lost or stolen cards. If your card is ever lost or stolen, if you're the P card holder or the P card manager, you need to notify Bank of America immediately at their customer service number, notify the P card manager if you're not the P card manager, and the P card administrators. It's important to act quickly to ensure that Bank of America flags the card as lost or stolen, and that we will not be responsible for fraudulent transactions. Personnel changes. If a P card holder changes departments or leaves the college, the P card administrators must be notified and the P card should be returned to the P card manager or P card holder's supervisor. The P card holder should turn in all of their receipts to the P card manager or their supervisor and complete the P card maintenance form to cancel their card. The P card program is under several different types of review and audit to ensure compliance with the policies and procedures and ensure we have good internal controls. External audits are performed, and purchasing performs internal audits as well. Purchasing will audit at least one transaction from each P card on a quarterly or more frequent basis. The results of the audit and monitoring will be formally documented and reported to the P card holder and their supervisor. The first audit finding will result in a procedure reminder email to the P card holder and their supervisor. The second audit finding will result in mandatory P card refresher training. And the third audit finding will result in P card suspension or deactivation as determined by the P card administrator and the relevant senior official, whomever the P card holder reports up to, that vice president, provost, or the president for direct reporting units. Serious findings are considered misuse of the P card and are handled as described in this misuse of P card section. Individuals who intentionally misuse their P card may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Some examples of misuse include, but are not limited to, use of the P card for personal purchases, splitting transactions to avoid the transaction limit, unauthorized purchases, and failure to approve P card transactions in the timeframe documented in the P card procedure manual. The first instance of misuse of the P card will be reported to the P card holder's supervisor, and mandatory refresher training will be provided. Additional violations will be reported to the P card holder's supervisor and relevant senior official for corrective action. The P card may be deactivated or suspended as determined by the P card administrator and relevant senior official. The P card and purchasing policies and procedures are linked on the purchasing website. Please ensure that you read the P card and purchasing policies and procedures that are available at this site. If you have any questions, please contact purchasing.